Welcome to session 6 of Finding Hope in Mental Illness. Remember, hope. Hold on, the pain ends. And today in this session, I'm excited. We've got 2 guests with me, and they're going to be able to shed a lot of insight into this area for us. And we've been giving you a lot of content, and now you're going to get to see life or legs put on that content. And so, Kim, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and we'll go from there.
So I'm Kim Thornton. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a certified clinical trauma professional. I'm also a supervisor. I have my own private practice and small business called Lightworks Professional Services that's focused on mental health awareness, training, counseling, and coaching. I'm also a full-time staff psychologist at Texas Tech University, and I work with the student population there.
So you have a lot of initials behind your name, and so basically what that means to me is you have a lot of experience dealing with mental illness.
Yes, it's a passion, so yes.
Which is why you're here today. So thanks for being here. So,
of course.
And Dr. Henderson, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Richard Henderson. I'm internal medicine physician with Covenant Medical Group. Been here 22 years and still kind of do it the old-fashioned way. Go to the hospital and the clinic as well. And see more geriatric side, but I do see from 18 and above. So get a good spectrum and of just about everything, including the mental health and depression, anxiety side as well.
Yeah, I know you see some of that, and you're one of those doctors that's hung in there. So many people look for a physician who will also be their hospitalist if they're in a hospital, right. And so I know a lot of people love you for that, and you have a very good reputation for that. And so anyway, thanks for joining us today. Thanks both of you for being here. And I guess first, let me just to say we've talked a little bit in this series about the prevalence of mental illness and anxiety, depression, other mental disorders. And we're releasing this now because around the holidays, it's always difficult with mental illness. I think y'all would agree with that. And then this year, we're throwing COVID in on top of that. And so we're seeing in the reports and in the research that mental illness is on the rise at this time. And so can you guys affirm, deny, what can you give insight into that in terms of what you're seeing and what you do day in and day out?
Well, yes. So yes, it's definitely increased. Depression and anxiety specifically. I've seen this like in both settings that I'm currently working in. My private practice, I probably get at least 1 or 2 calls a day of people wanting to initiate services, and I'm having to refer people out because I just don't have the room. And that's pretty common right now. Usually, Lubbock, we have a pretty good mental health community. But even as it is right now, people are having a hard time getting in somewhere to see someone just because there's so many people struggling right now. And at Tech, we had to move our services to biweekly because we were just having so many students come in. So going from seeing 22 clients a week to seeing 44 in 2 weeks. So it's definitely picked up quite a bit.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about in this series, I believe is on the first episode, is the fact that with the prevalence of anxiety and depression and really emphasizing to people who are struggling in this area that you are not alone, and that 1 out of every 2 adults will experience some form of anxiety or depression at some point in their lifetime. And I can't remember the exact statistic on college campuses, but it's even greater than that on college campuses. And so you can definitely affirm that.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And isolation and the new type of anxiety that kind of comes with the pandemic and the social unrest right now, it's a whole new ball game when it comes to what the anxiety is actually presenting for college students.
Dr. Henderson, can you speak to that in terms of your practice? Have you seen the same thing in your practice in terms of anxiety and depression?
Well, we see lots of COVID and lots of phone calls about COVID, which, you just hear how anxious they are just based on that. So they're not always saying, I'm having trouble with anxiety, but you can hear it and see it. Or, their family members are having it, so they're under a lot of stress. And I guess the interesting angle as well is, a lot of my patients have elderly parents, or some of my patients are the elderly ones in the nursing homes that have been isolated for months. And just the decline that's happening, and it just, shows us how relational we are, that God made us to be relational. And when that is cut off, you start dying. And some of these patients literally have died, but others, they just seen them decline with their memory, their functioning, losing weight, not eating, and just because they cannot be connected with their family and friends. So from that, it's been quite tragic.
Yeah. I've heard it said that the mental pandemic will last lots longer than the physical pandemic. Do you guys agree with that?
I would say in general, especially since the economic ramifications and loss of loved ones and other stuff, that's going to be carrying with you with all the stresses, anxiety, and depression that goes with it so easily.
So again, I just want just to emphasize here to people listening, especially if they're struggling with anxiety and depression, that they are not alone. They are definitely not alone, and this is something very common. And I think that's one of the things that's so difficult with the stigma when it comes to anxiety and depression is people feeling like they're the only ones dealing with this. I'm just curious, Dr. Henderson, when you get people in your office who are actually willing to admit to you they're struggling with anxiety and depression, do you kind of sense that that's kind of a shameful topic that they don't want to talk about a lot of times? Or?
At times, I mean, I think that's a kind of a West Texas thing. You know, you shouldn't let life get you like that. You know, just pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and get going. You don't admit that kind of thing. You just push through. But usually the pain and pressure from it is affecting them so much that they do break down and say, okay, I will talk about it. Or a lot of times the family comes and says, it's time, we need to do something, and they're having problems. No, I'm not. Oh yeah, what about this, this, and that? And then they'll finally say, okay.
So you unintentionally get to be a part of an intervention, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah. So,
but I think that's an important thing to note too, is that another thing we've really emphasized in the series is you have to talk to someone. And so what you're saying is oftentimes it's someone who's told them you need to go talk to your doctor, or I'm going to take you.
Well, the family comes with them and
Exactly.
does it. Or they say, the family has said they're going to come with me if I don't bring this up. And then we talk about it.
Yeah. Would you say, Kim, that that's the same in your practice? Like, how do most people, like, do they voluntarily walk in? Do you feel like there's been someone that's told them you need to go talk to somebody, or how does that typically work from your perspective?
I mean, I kind of get a little bit of everything. I have a lot more teenagers and things like that right now than I usually see, just because they're struggling too, and their parents are worried about them. But a lot of the adults, they get feedback from people of like, oh, maybe you should think about talking to a professional, or maybe you should try medication, or maybe you should this. And so I think finally they just kind of like, it beats them down until they're like, okay, yeah, maybe I should do something. I get a lot of, I don't know what else to call them, but looky-loos, like people that just want to call and talk to you to just kind of get some validation that like, yeah, maybe this is a little bit more than just feeling lonely. So I get a little bit more of that than I typically do. Usually before I would get calls and they were set, like, yeah, let's do this. Now I get a little bit more apprehension from people who have never experienced depression and anxiety before, and they just don't know what it is. They're like, I don't understand what's happening to me. I just want to understand. I hear that probably 10 times a day. I just want to understand what's happening to me. And so I get a lot more of like people wanting that, I think kind of like an education piece to it, just to kind of ease some of the anxiety itself.
That makes sense. So, so Dr. Henderson, when someone walks into your office and you see, you're an internal medicine physician, so you see it all. So you may see someone come in that has a sick liver or a sick kidney or a sick heart. And we've talked about mental illness being a sick brain. So there's not this stigma on dealing with a sick liver or a sick kidney, but there seems to be this stigma on dealing with a sick brain. Does that play out in your practice, or can you speak to that in terms of the difference in how people approach those things?
Yeah, although you'll see it with everything, a lot of times there's resistance to, well, I don't want to take something for blood pressure. I'm going to get addicted to it, or my heart or cholesterol, I can just fix it. But people in general are going to be more open to, well, I'll take the medicine for that. But when it comes to depression, anxiety, that's a little more difficult. That's saying I'm weak, maybe I'm spiritually not where I should be, or emotionally, and that is a character flaw rather than a medical issue. And So we sometimes have to talk about that. I just bring up kind of those things. We don't go that way if it's your heart, your kidney, or this. And plus, the brain is so much more complex than those organs. It's amazing our brain doesn't fall apart more frequently. So, and especially when it's under constant stress, bombarded with it, things will start falling apart, breaking up, and you're going to need help. And sometimes medication is part of it, and it's not a bad thing. It's not saying you're weak or a lousy person or anything like that, but it's one of the tools we can use to help get it right and help you get healthier. And usually most of them agree with that. And plus we try to tell them some other things to do as well.
Yeah. And so if someone, like you say, you're dealing with someone that's struggling with blood pressure problems and you diagnose that they need medication for that, like I'm assuming there are tons of drugs out on the market that deal with blood pressure, and you have to try to choose the right one, and then you have to try to choose the right dosage. And so is it the same? Yeah. So is it the same when prescribing medications for anxiety or depression?
Yeah. I mean, with most everything you've got, there's the diet component of things. There's the exercise component and relationship and sleep and that, but then the medication as well. And it's actually interesting, not that we're using it much yet, but it's starting. There's some genetic tests actually you can do that can make it easier for you to pick a medication for treating depression and anxiety that's going to work first off the bat. Because most of the studies show sometimes it takes 2, 3, or 4 times adjusting the medicine to find the one that's going to work best for their metabolism, their body. But with the genetic testing, you can maybe narrow that down to, hey, we got it right the first or second time. So I think that's going to be more of the future. And that's just showing, it's not that you're mentally or emotionally weak. There's some genetic things going on that we're understanding more, that this type of medicine is going to help this pathway better. You're going to metabolize it more efficiently and it'll work for you. So
that's interesting. In one of the episodes, we actually talked a little bit about that in terms of we can't control those things, but we can control how we respond to those things, which is really interesting. So, and I just wanted to emphasize that because I think sometimes what I see is like I may have someone in my office and they've gone to their physician and they've been prescribed a medication, and then they're like, well, it's just not working. It's not. And I'm like, well, have you gone back to talk to your physician about that? And they're like, well, no, because it's not working. I'm like, well, there's other things they can do. It may be another medication
or a different combination, or just same thing with blood pressure. Most people will call it's not working. Let's try another one, or increase the dose, or try a different timing in the day, and those kind of things. Same thing with those medications.
Yeah.
And I will have to say, probably the only times that I've come in and people just gave me a big hug, like you almost saved their lives, was when it comes with, you almost going to say, the old-fashioned nervous breakdown. They are so anxious, feel like their life is falling apart, panic attacks, all this. They just don't know what they're going to do. And I say, actually, we have medicine for that. It's going to work really well. And it's not Valium. There's some other ones there. And it's going to work fast. You're going to start sleeping better and all that. And a week or two, see them back, they come back. They're just, countenance is better. They've calmed down. They're not just like, wow, I didn't know I could feel more normal again. Yeah. So I don't see that usually happen with, blood pressure. Thank you. I got so much better. But when you're just on edge and anxious and nothing helping, and we can give you medicine to help start improve that quickly, that's rewarding to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great word. So Kim, is it the same way for you? So do a lot of your clients expect to come in and have a 50-minute session with you and expect to be cured from anxiety or depression, or do they understand that this is going to be a journey that they have to go through?
I think that right now, like on a society level, like mental health treatment is more acceptable. So there's more understanding about counseling and stuff like that than there ever has been before, especially with like the populations that I focus on most with like college students. They're advocates for mental health. And so there's a little bit more understanding. I think something I see more than people expecting the cure is a lot of like self-diagnosing of like people wanting just to have an answer, like what's wrong with me? Give me a number in the DSM so I can go look it up and figure out what's wrong. I see that a little bit more often. But again, I think it kind of comes back to that anxiety of just knowing what's wrong, knowing what I'm dealing with. But no, I mean, I think most of them understand that like counseling is a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Now, when I worked in a middle school, that was a different story. parents very much did want you to fix their child after, a 40-minute anger management group.
Yeah, I think you could have just stopped at working in a middle school is a whole different story, because that's probably true. I was there for 3 years, so I get it.
And I do want to say one thing. I want to clarify, not every time that I give a medicine like that, they're going to be better in a week or two.
Right.
That's just more a certain subset. A lot of times it takes longer for it to kick in, and the longer you're on it, the better it gets. And you still, a lot of times, need counseling and other stuff. It is a process.
Well, and one of the things I loved what you said too, Dr. Henderson, is that, like, as a physician, you really approach it from a holistic perspective. Like, yes, you can prescribe medication, but it's more than just that. It's diet, it's exercise, it's counseling. And so I think it's probably reassuring that you approach it from that holistic perspective. Medicine's not the cure-all. I'm saying this to a physician, but medicine's not the cure-all. I mean,
but we all want the easy out. That's
exactly
the easiest one.
Just give me a pill that I can take and fix me.
Yeah, because I tell lots of people, hey, do this for diet. Like, I don't want to do that. Just which pill will fix it all? I said it will help, but you still, if you want the full meal deal, you got to approach with all of it.
But sometimes getting on the medication can be helpful.
Well, it's still an important leg, because sometimes you can do all those things. It's still not going to be enough.
Right.
I mean, because there's, like I said, there might be genetic propensity for you to have these issues that a medicine is going to be able to address.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you bring that out. So what would both of you say to someone who's listening to this and may either be struggling, Kim, with what you said of something doesn't feel right, but I don't know exactly what it is, or someone who knows without a doubt, I'm really anxious, or I'm really depressed, and they're just not able to, they don't know what to do, or they may be scared of what the next step is. So what advice would you have for somebody that's probably in that place right now?
I'm supposed to shy away from advice as a counselor, but I mean, one of the biggest things is that I talk with my clients about is that you can't think your way out of depression and anxiety. Like, you can tell yourself every day to get out of bed, but telling yourself and then doing it is very different. And I think, like with what Dr. Henderson was bringing up with the medication piece, like medication can help you get out of bed. It can help you have the energy to get yourself up, but your feet have to do the walking. Like, you have to put the work in too. And I know that that's like the biggest barrier for a lot of people is the stigma and the fear of being judged. Or I get a lot of professionals that come through my private practice, and they're worried about their job finding out that they're in therapy, or seeking help for substance use issues and things like that. And the biggest thing is talk to someone. Get it out of your head, get it in somebody else's ears, allow someone to carry it with you. And sometimes getting to hear yourself talking about it with another person is enough to make you realize how bad it actually is.
And Dr. Henderson, what about for you? What if someone's wondering, when do I need to make an appointment? Like, at what point does it get to when I need to go talk to my doctor about it? Like, what advice would you have for someone in that place?
I'll say, I guess if it's affecting your work, your relationships, their suffering, or people are coming up to you and telling you that there's issues and maybe you were not aware of it, to listen to them and take that into it. I guess it's not always just, I feel sad, or, that's going to think what a lot of people think of depression. Although that's part of it. I've found probably the question I ask that nails it for me is, what do you usually enjoy doing, and are you still doing it? Whether that's, I look forward to going golf with my friends, or this or that. And if they're pulling away and not doing that anymore, that's a really big red flag. So if you find yourself not wanting to go do the things that normally energize you and you enjoy and fun, pulling away, and it's time to, I think textbook is 2 weeks is what they say when you have this kind of stuff, then you should probably start looking into that. And obviously, the big obvious ones, you're starting to think of suicide, ruminating about plans, or world will be better off without me, and those kind of things. Obviously, do it sooner.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too. And so, and Kim, this may be a question for you, but if someone's at that place and it's 10 o'clock at night, and obviously their physician is not in the office, where do they go? What do they do? What are resources out there for people who get to that place?
I mean, there's a lot. So, I mean, that's one of the nice things about like technology and things like that now. One of the things that I give a lot of referrals to my students is because they like written communication. They're not big like talk on the phone. They think it's weird when you call them. So there's actually the National Suicide Hotline, and there's also the National Suicide Text Line. And they can just simply text home to 741-741, and somebody will text them back, and they can initiate a conversation using that format. There's also the phone call, which I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but I can provide those to you later if necessary. There's also StarCare. They have their crisis line that is 24 hours, and that's 740-1414. It's a local resource where they can just call and talk to someone. We have a great protocol system at Texas Tech where we have our own suicide prevention crisis line. Most of these lines now are actual counselors. They're not, just operators picking up a phone. They're actual counselors that know how to walk you through assessing for suicide and helping you connect to resources and things like that. And so if you don't have a close person, if you don't have a friend or a parent or, something like that that you can talk to about what's happening, or maybe you feel embarrassed or ashamed of having those thoughts, that's pretty common, especially in West Texas. It's anonymous. You can call those numbers, and it depends on how much information you want to give them. But that's where I would start. Like if you don't have anybody else, and then they can help you connect to resources where you are.
That's good. And Dr. Henderson, from the medical perspective, if someone's at that place and they don't want to do the call or text, can they just show up at the ER?
Yep. They definitely, and they have counselors, psychiatry, probably LPCs and all that available to assess. And if you need, they can do inpatient admission to help at that point. So yeah, if it's that critical, that bad, go to the ER. That's what they're for. And
I guess you could also, I'm sure this is how this works, but if you can't remember anything else, call 911 and they'll get you to the right place. So, this information is extremely helpful. And Kim, can I get you to speak just briefly? We're talking about having a safe place to talk. And so we're creating something through this series, giving people a safe place to talk. Can you speak to that for just a second and how people might become part of that?
Yeah, sure. So we've created a Facebook page that is for the purpose of what we're talking about today. If you don't feel comfortable reaching out to someone in the community to initiate counseling, or maybe you're not ready to talk about medication with your physician, the Facebook page that we've started is called Hope, and it is for the Hold On, the Pain Ends. So basically what the page is for is to give people a safe place to talk to somebody who cares and is there to support them. And that, we don't have like a specific strategy in mind just yet, but it's just opening that line of communication in a safe platform.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so you can start there, and then we'll hope that group turns into maybe even a place where you can come in person if you want to. And
yeah, that would be something that I feel pretty passionate about starting here at Aldersgate, and even bringing in other people that maybe don't attend church here, just to get people introduced to some of the skills that I work on every day with my clients, teaching them. And because, in reality, a lot of people can't afford counseling or mental health resources, and that's why they shy away from it. And so maybe getting the word out there that, hey, this is something that we have going on, that you can come and you can sit in a room and you can talk about these things that are happening in your life with other people who will understand and won't judge you, and learn some skills in the process.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really appreciative of you for doing that for us and for everyone listening, and appreciative of both of you for sitting down with us today and talking about this issue. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you guys would like to throw out on the table that maybe we didn't cover, or maybe anything else you would like for anyone listening to hear?
I guess quick things that I tell patients before, because a lot of times we try to refer them to a counselor as well, but So I'll just get it out there. Who knows how many people? So for the diet wise, I try to say 10 servings of vegetables and fruit a day and cut out the sugar. I mean, probably all know that, but you need to hear it from your doctor. That helps your brain work better. If you don't put good stuff in there, how can it work good?
So now I'm anxious.
I'm feeling a little convicted.
No.
Exercise, even if just walking, especially in nature. I mean, God created nature for us, and we're in urban jungle and buildings all the time. It's just not healthy for us getting outside. Walking in the park, that's a good thing.
I can attest to that. So I've never really dealt with chronic anxiety or depression in my lifetime, but I have dealt with situational anxiety and depression. And this season through this pandemic and leading through this pandemic, I've definitely suffered from situational anxiety and probably situational depression as well. But I've also started walking every day during the pandemic, and I can tell you that just getting out with my thoughts, and it's medicine for me, and it's really helpful.
Exercise, walking in nature is medicine. I think God created it for us for that reason, and you feel a little closer to Him as well.
Yeah,
in that.
But I'm going to have to
when
work
it's cold
on
and windy, though. I know,
and I'm going to have to work on the 10 servings of vegetables a day. But I have gotten the walking down, so I'll keep working on the other one as well.
And the other thing I usually tell them to do is, a gratitude journal. 3 things that you're thankful for each day. And then, because a lot of times with depression, anxiety, you just get in these loops, ruminating, and it kind of creates these, I just call them ruts, in the neurochemical pathways in the brain. And the longer you keep staying in those, the deeper and wider they get. It's going to take longer to get out of it. So that can help pull you out of that and get out of your head. And then the next thing is do something nice, unexpected for somebody each day. Another way to get yourself out of your own head and thinking about yourself all the time. Try to out there and
Getting
that
beyond
does
yourself.
It. And of course, spiritual practice with, Bible, devotional. And I liked what you said the other day. Kind of helped me because sometimes, get in the rut. I was like, oh, well, I'm reading my Bible. But then you're like, the wise men, they were anticipating, expecting God to show up. So when I started having that, I was like, oh, He did. Yeah. So kind of having that anticipation, He's going to speak to you, just waiting for it. That's having the right attitude can help with that.
That's good. That's really good. So, Kim, anything else you want to throw out there?
Just to kind of, I was going to say pretty much all of those things. But one of the things that I work with a lot of my clients on is understanding that 5 minutes of something is better than nothing. And it's one of the best strategies that you can use if you are struggling with some depression, change of your environment, just getting up and reminding yourself of the power that you do have. Even if it's just go outside and walk for 5 minutes. I had a client just go walk to her car and come back to her room. A lot of the times we get stuck in those ruts of the negative thought process, and we lose our ability to remember what power we actually do have. And a lot of people kind of get stuck on, I want to take away the negative, which just makes them feel more powerless. And so I always just tell people, stop focusing on taking away the negative and focus on adding something positive. It's a whole lot easier, and you'll see a lot more progress.
Wow, this is really good. I could sit and listen to you two talk all day long.
I guess there'll be one other one.
Yeah, go ahead. Because I could do it all day long.
Well, this is just something I see that's big, and I think it's a root of a lot of chronic illness and stuff. It's unforgiveness and bitterness. I think, and that's a root for a lot of depression, anxiety as well that I've seen. So look for that for the core and try to just deal with that as quick as you can. I mean, not all depression, anxiety is that, but a big part of it is.
Yeah. And
wounds from the past that you're not letting go of, that you're staying bitter at the person, this and that, it just will break your system down.
And again, I think that's why the holistic approach is so important, is because that's why a 50-minute counseling session, it's going to sometimes take more than that to get to the root of that. So like I said, I could sit here and listen to you two all day long, such wisdom and intelligence. And I love your heart for what you do. And I know your heart for anyone who's listening who might be struggling with anxiety and depression is to take your wisdom and advice, and if not from you two, from someone out there that they trust. And so I would encourage anyone that's listening to do that. And anyway, I know you've been encouraging to those, and so really, really appreciate your time today, and appreciate you being here for this session. And we've got one more session and then a bonus podcast for you. So I hope that you'll continue to check out and go all the way through the end of finding hope in mental illness.